the Digital Guru Studios, my secondary one, and I have on honor and privilege again to have on Pamela Evette, Lieutenant Governor running for governor of South Carolina. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Joel. I hope you're doing good.
Oh, I have a question to ask, but I already know the answer. Are things slowing down for you?
No, absolutely not. And that's a good thing, right? I started out Wednesday in Greenville, went to Spartanburg, came back to Greenville, went to Rock Hill, and then then I went to oh gosh, Camden, and then ended up in Palmetto Bluff, where I gave a keynote remarks for the bio conference that was in Palmetto Bluff. And that was just on Wednesday. So, I think it's a great thing.
You need to clone yourself so you but no, you couldn't have two of you out there. That would just be too much for it. I'm talking about that's too much.
Now you remember that movie, right? I mean, where then everybody starts tripping over, and then you get the weird parts of your personality. I think I'm a force to be reckoned with, just as myself. I'm just gonna continue to go with that.
Do you ever, Joe, just take a day and go, you know what? I just need a day to myself. But you don't have that opportunity at this point.
No, well, you know what? Sunday, I kind of did that. My mom turned 97 on Sunday.
Wow.
And so I had an event on Saturday morning, and then I had family. We kind of celebrated her Saturday night. And then Sunday it was an all-day celebration of her 97th birthday. So that was my day I took for myself. I cooked breakfast, I cooked dinner, I baked a cake, and we celebrated my mom. So that was my day off in the last 10 days.
And then you kicked her right back into gear on Monday. I know how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my listeners have always said, what are we going to talk about next? Because I asked them, and the big one that came last week, it was crime and punishment that we talked about. This week it's education. About 40% of households have kids who are K-12. Another 5 or 6% have kids who are in the secondary education. So I want to know what we're going to be doing because there's a lot of things, accountability and standards in the K-12. Are we going to do anything about that? Because we're on the pretty much on the bottom of the list here.
Well, Joel, you're absolutely right. And, we have a superintendent of education, Ellen Weaver. She has made some great strides over the last 3 years since she's been in office to make things better. We saw that. We saw improvements in our reading scores, but we saw a lot of failure when it came to our math scores. I believe that the best way to turn around education, I've been saying this since I've been lieutenant governor, is full universal school choice, where money follows the child, where parents can make those critical decisions about education for their children. And I also believe firmly that we have to focus more on, those high school years, making sure we embed actually, accreditation programs. So
Mhm.
people can come out that aren't wanting to go to college, that aren't wanting to go in the military, because all of our high school students should graduate either being military ready, college ready, or work ready. And I think we do a good job if a student wants to go in the military or wants to go into college. But I think where we lose most of our young people is the kids that just want to be work ready. So if we can embed certifications into our high school years, that those K through 12 years, I'm hoping as a mom and somebody that likes to embrace common sense that the kids that are our truancy problems are probably truant because they don't feel like the pathway is designed for them. And if we design a pathway that fits what they see as their future, and we know how warped that could be for those years, but at least we give them something that motivates them to come to school and gives them the opportunity to be able to have not just a job, but a career path when
Well, I
they
know.
graduate. So I think our technical college system is something that I will tell you 10 years ago when my middle son wanted to go was not championed as a top tier choice.
Yes.
And that, I mean, the governor and myself, we've really used our platform and our microphone to turn that around and to say, this is not a second tier option. This is a pathway to a great paying job. So much, we believed in that so much that we created the WIN scholarships.
Hmm.
General Assembly funded them. And Joel, I'm proud to tell you that through those scholarships, we have put 121 South Carolinians through our technical college program, setting them up for a career, right? And a really
Exactly.
great.
I know you mentioned school choice, and while it's nice, is it something that's attainable and achievable?
Yes, it
Good.
is attainable and achievable. You know, you'll get the argument, and I've gotten this for years, is that rural communities and poor communities will be adversely affected by this,
Hmm.
but the data doesn't shake out. You look at states like um, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi, they have had the best success in educational outcomes when they went to universal school choice. Governor Tate Reeves, he was a lieutenant governor when I became lieutenant governor, and so I had a chance to meet him for a brief time. He put a ton of focus in early education, a lot of state money. Right now, in the latest scorings, I read an article that said Mississippi has the smartest fourth graders in the country.
Wow.
And that was from a big, a big commitment into early childhood education and something, again, the governor and I have been talking about. It is much cheaper to close the gap on kids who are more advanced educationally than those who are not in those younger years. If you wait until you get into middle school and high school, it is a lot more expensive to try to close that education gap.
Oh
And
yes.
so it's really important to focus on early childhood education. And again, don't trust somebody's opinion. Because I like to say when I have conversations with people, now, is this fact or is it feelings? Because if it's fact, I'll talk about it with you all day long. But if it's feelings, I don't know how to combat that. And the facts are showing that school choice is the best way to do it because you kind of bring a sense of capitalism into the game where
Yes,
you're either the cream is gonna rise or it's not. And early childhood education and an investment in that pays off.
it does.
That's data.
Let's talk about facts. And one is that South Carolina has the highest turnover rates of any teachers. How are we going to keep those good teachers here in South Carolina instead of them going to Florida or Georgia or North Carolina?
So, Joel, something that I'm really proud of, when the governor and I started campaigning, when we became a ticket, we made a campaign promise that by the time we left office in 2026, our starting teacher salaries would be $50,000 a year or higher. When we first started, we were the lowest in the Southeast, our starting teacher salaries.
Hmm.
And that is a recipe for getting rid of the best and the brightest to other states. I am so proud of the fact that as of this year, our teachers are at 48.5. The General Assembly has promised to give us the next step of money so that when we leave office in 2026, our teachers, starting teacher salary will be $50,000 a year. Even today, our starting teacher salary is higher than North Carolina and Georgia. Nobody is really talking about that. So that encourages me that we are keeping the best and brightest here. And we need to get more parental engagement. Also, some great statistics. The more parents are engaged in their child's education, the more successful the outcome is, the happier the teachers are in the classroom. So we need to encourage, for years, parents have been discouraged from getting involved in schools and getting involved in the classroom. We have to encourage that more. And I think it was 2 years ago in the governor's state of the state, he said, we need more parental involvement in the classroom and not less parental involvement.
Well, that leads me to my next point. You must be looking at my talking points here, and that is parental involvement. What's taught in the classroom and how much parents should have a say in that. And obviously, let's continue on with your thoughts on that.
So, I can remember when my oldest, who's 29 now, was young. And even though I was running my business, I would do reading time at her school. I was the book fair mom, right? So reading was really important for me. And parents would come in and they would pull kids who were struggling out of the classroom and you'd have some one-on-one time. And this was a great thing. And then I could see over the years, because now my youngest is 18, so there was a 10-year span, how parents were invited into the classroom less and less. And I think parents have to feel like they're a partner in that. I think there's a little bit of blame to go around on both sides. Probably for a long time, schools pushed parents out of the classroom, and then parents just felt like, okay, I think everything's going well because I'm not hearing anything, right? No news is good news
Yeah.
until COVID came around. And then all of a sudden it was like this big wake up call to who are we putting on our school boards? What are we teaching in the classroom? Um, and if you look at, we have two schools in South Carolina called Meeting Street Academy. And these
Okay.
are public-private partnerships. And for all of your viewers, look them up. There's one in Charleston, there's one in Spartanburg. And they actually, you have to be below poverty level for your kids to go because the theory behind it is um, poor kids can learn. And we're going to make the whole world know that. And these students at both these academies are well above grade level. But the key is parents have to be involved and they will work it around your schedule because I realize that some parents are working more than one job and we
Mhm.
have to be sensitive to that. So the schools will work it around volunteering in the school, showing up for parental conferences, and they'll work it around a parent's schedule. But those kids are all thriving. And we must look at the data of schools that are making parents engaged in the beginning. But then I think as a parent myself, once you engage and you see the successes that are happening, you want to continue to be engaged.
Do you think that COVID was obviously it was a speed bump for a lot of things, in the financial industry, with everything with businesses. Do you think that was a speed bump with education where kids couldn't go to school, they had to learn, there was, remote learning, and to me personally, I think that it harmed those kids, and as that generation or that era moves through, I think it's going to be difficult with them going into the high school now.
Joel, you're 100% right. I think we've seen that. The data is really clear that COVID really hurt. They hurt young students who were at home, in rural areas where internet wasn't as good, and we were relying on trying to get buses that had an internet signal where kids could kind of come around and get work done. Teachers were putting together paper packets and trying to get those to kids. We saw the importance of infrastructure like internet into rural areas. So it pretty much drew a line in the sand that said this has to be addressed. But unfortunately, there was a lot of slide during that time. And, I think we can all safely say that kids not being in the classroom had a large, very negative effect, not just here in South Carolina,
Yes.
but really around the country.
Yeah, and unfortunately we had to go through that. We're coming through the other side, and that's a good thing. One of the things I want to close on is we've talked before, and I've talked with all the candidates who are running. I have a poll on voicesfromthebalcony.net. You can go to that, vftbradio.net/polls. And I say, if the election was today, who would you vote for governor? I don't give the choice for undecided. It is A, B, C, D, and E. There's five people who are running. And I've looked at some polls and it says, this person is 19, this person is 18, this person is 16, and undecided is an entire third, 35%. When I do those polls, and I'll be telling you this one here, when I do those polls, you're sitting at 34%, the Attorney General is sitting at 29%, and Congresswoman Mason's at 21%. I think if you take the undecideds out, I think they've made up their mind. That's just me
Well,
personally and my listeners.
no, I think that's great. And I'm very happy with the way your results turned out, I must tell you. But yeah, I mean, polling is, I think if you give people maybe the undecided option, it just gives them a little wiggle room to say, I don't know, I'll wait it out a little bit more, I'll see what comes out. But I like the way you phrase it. If you're going to vote today, and that gives us something, for me, it tells me that my message is getting through to people,
Mhm.
that people want a business person, somebody who has actually created jobs and signed the front of paychecks, that has the know-how and the capability to run something. And that means to me that my message is getting out. And the fact that I have been a loyal Trump supporter. I mean, especially in Horry County. I mean, that is, and across the state, this is a very Trump state.
Yes, it
And
is.
I think people see the fact that almost every candidate will stand up and say, I've been President Trump's most loyal supporter. And I go back and when people say that, like, oh, your opponent said this and your opponent said that, I always go back to January of 23. And I say, President Trump came to South Carolina looking for friends and looking for allies. And out of all the people who have thrown their hat in the ring to run for governor, I'm the only one that stood with him. And that
Mhm.
was a sad, and don't let anybody fool you that their schedule was jam-packed because it was a Saturday afternoon. And so very little going on in the work, community and what we're due in our Monday through Friday jobs. This was a Saturday. And I think loyalty mattered. And I've always believed that President Trump didn't need to be president, but the presidency needed President Trump.
I agree with you. I know that my listeners are statewide. I now have a reach of everybody in the state, all 3.4 million voters. And the numbers I'm getting are not just from Horry County, which is where I'm based here in Myrtle Beach, but I'm getting from Charleston and Spartanburg and Clemson, all across the state. And I think to me, it's a more of a comprehensive poll. And like I said, taking out the undecided, I think that it's a plus or minus 4%, so it's still pretty early.
Yeah.
But if you want to see these numbers, I'll have them posted and I'll share them with every candidate out there. With that, we're going to wrap this one up. I know you're a busy person. You've probably got 14 other places to visit today. I do appreciate you taking time out to speak with me again today.
Well, Joe, it's always great to sit and speak with you, and I look forward to the next time, and let's do this often.
We will do this often. This is Joel Wilson. I'll see you at the next tee box.